going back to the cross-body, get up portion in phase 1. In order to do that, the reflex of creating stability, because a lot of times when people lie down and I tell them, now I need you to roll over, like if I'm doing my right side, the left leg will pop up constantly. And what that tells me is they don't know how to create tension and enough intra-abdominal pressure to stabilize their body into the ground as hard as possible to come across the body. They don't have that reflexive stability work, right? Like, it should be almost like a domino effect. Like you push that first domino and then everything falls into place. And I haven't found really another exercise like the Get Up to develop this kind of training effect as well as anything else out there. So I think that right there, number 4, that reflexive stability, is a game changer for people. And yeah, I haven't come across anything that, can even match it. Number 5, ties the right arm to the left leg and the left arm to the right leg. So again, it goes back to the reciprocal opposite arm, opposite leg. So if you look at us walking, you will notice that if you take your left leg forward into a step, your right arm counterbalances it. We walk every single day in that pattern, opposite arm, opposite leg, opposite arm, opposite leg. It happens naturally. So in my mind, I'm like, if that's a pattern that the human body, us as Homo sapiens, that is ingrained in our brain as the most efficient way to walk, to run, sprint, whatever it is, it almost makes more sense to, when you're in the gym, to resemble that movement, right? Lunges is one of those ways, but most of the time, like, our arms are fixed at holding dumbbells, whatever it is. And the nice thing with the Get Up, you get that cross patterning effect when you do the exercise. And again, it's another moment where when I was researching the Get Up and I read that point, I was like, holy shit. It was like one of those times where things started linking. I'm like, this makes so much sense, right? Like, this exercise makes you better at being a human being, right? Like, it promotes what's ingrained in us since the dawn of time. Number 7, this is a huge one. It stimulates the vestibular system, which is one of the 3 senses that contribute to balance. So when you think of balance training, people automatically assume that you need to be on a fucking Bosu ball with your eyes closed, like you're about to do a fucking kick from the Karate Kid. That is not balance training. Our balance develops as we are, babies and we eventually walk. It almost sounds, crazy to think that as we are babies lying on our backs, the moment we start learning how to roll over is the moment that we start building our balance. If you look at the science behind how we develop, think about it. If a baby goes from lying on their back, rolling over, crawling, eventually going into a kneeling position, standing up and walking, that moment that they decide to walk, they need to have developed some sort of balance thing inside their body. It's not they started doing exercises on a fucking Bosu ball to improve their balance. They developed those receptors in their feet, their whole body, in order to be able to walk for the first time, right? It's really fast paced, and a lot of times when I get clients who are like, oh, I have terrible balance, oh, I have terrible balance, and I think of they need foot stability, hip stability, core stability. All those 3 things equate to balance training. So when I tell people, hey, we're going to do the Turkish Get Up to improve your balance, people look at me like, that's fucking crazy. But it all connects together. So if I wanted to improve someone's balance, I'm going to the Turkish Get Up. So when I coach the kettlebell Turkish Get Up, as you're lying down and you're holding the kettlebell into your fist, your eyes are on the object the entire time. So now we're looking at our object. The moment we come across the body, we are still looking at that object. We are still training our visual system. Now, when I go into the high bridge position to transition into phase 2, I am still looking at that kettlebell, still training my vision. Now, going into phase 3 is where all this stuff gets challenged. When I get into phase 2 position where my hands on the ground, my knees on the ground, my legs out to the side, and I'm holding, as I come up, and now I need to straighten out my legs into a half kneel position, my eyes will go straight. That moment of looking up at the kettlebell and then looking out straight is where a lot of people will tend to lose their balance. But if I spend a lot of time in phase 1 and phase 2, that's not going to happen. A lot of people will have enough stability and enough training within the vestibular and visual kind of aspects of the exercise that when they get to the phase 3 where they're kneeling and they're going to go into the standing position, balance is not going to be an issue. And that's the thing, like, just think about when babies develop, when they how long it takes in each stage. In each stage they spend enough time to develop all those like kind of necessary steps to get to the next phase of their developmental stage. So if I spend enough time with these two, I tend to spend about 8 weeks here. If I spend about 8 weeks here in phase 1 and 2, by the time they get to phase 3, all of these two, the vestibular and visual, and also like the stability necessary to get into that, tends to be pretty solid. And again, this number can change, but for the most part I spend about 8 weeks here. And now the other thing I want to bring up is number 9 on my list here. It also stimulates your proprioception system, which also contributes to balance. The other thing that I have not said yet, the big thing with kettlebell training, which is so brilliant, is training in bare feet. When you see someone training kettlebells with shoes on, you know that they don't know anything. Or if they're at a gym where they don't allow people to go barefoot, they're in like socks, that person knows what they're fucking doing. So if you look at children, most of the time they're barefoot. Most of the time their feet are receiving all that information to develop balance, to develop, if objects are uneven so it's not a flat floor. Like, our feet are like our hands. Our hands are constantly touching things and reacting and adapting to it, but most of the time for us, like right now, my feet are in socks and shoes when I'm at work, whatever it is, and I don't get that. So my feet tend to go to atrophy. When kids are barefoot a lot more, they learn how to create better balance. It's another reason why yogis have really good balance, because they train in that element barefoot. If you saw a yogi with shoes on, they're not going to develop the greatest of balance. And that's another reason why I love kettlebell training, is that let's get back rooted into the ground, and it transfers over to so many different things. So when I get someone barefoot, we're going to be working on their balance indirectly just because they're barefoot. They're going to learn how to stabilize on one leg. They're going to learn how to grip into the floor. Now with those things, when it comes to lunges, deadlifting, squats, now they know how to get into the ground with their feet, and not just like, oh, I'm deadlifting, I'm just going to shift my weight back into my heels because that's how I feel my hamstrings. But then they're just losing so much that they could potentially have. So that's another huge thing that the whole kettlebell community provides us, is that kind of return to where our roots are, which is barefoot. In order to get to phase 3, like all these 3 things right here, all these phases, in order to do all those things, you develop like a kinesthetic awareness, like just knowing space and time. We almost learn your own consciousness of doing the exercise, right? A lot of times with the people I work with, they don't really have good coordination. Like if you wanted to improve your coordination, like this is the exercise to utilize. And the moment that you start doing the get up over and over and over and over again, you will find that your movement patterns just improve. Like there's moments where you're constantly looking at that kettlebell in your fist and your eyes will have to move to the transition, especially when you're up here and then you come up through to the kneeling position. You just need to know that it's there, right? And that a lot of times people tend to look up, they tend to look at the object, right? But knowing that it's there, you develop a little bit more awareness around your body just because of this one exercise. It develops a front and back weight shift. So this, in my opinion, is that moment where you're in a half kneeling position with the kettlebell up in the air and you need to shift your weight from that half kneeling position to go forward. And this is like that brilliant, like honestly the whole exercise. Honestly, I thought I was going to be just talking about kettlebells in general. I'm just going through the whole exercise is brilliant because now, especially number 11 that we're on, when we move forward, like when we want to produce motion or force or power, we need to know how to take the weight that's on us, within us, holding from a dead stop to a propulsion like position to go forward. And that get up will develop those small intricate muscles that are responsible for that movement, for that weight shift from back to forward. On the way back down, like I look at the kettlebell get up on the way up is almost learning how to accelerate your own body, whereas on the way down it teaches you how to decelerate. And when it comes to athletic performance, those are the two things that every athlete needs, is learning how to accelerate and decelerate, accelerate, decelerate. And if you want to get now sport specific, like you can have fun with learning the entire get up and doing tempos. Like you can tell people, I want you to go do your get up as fast as possible and as slow as possible on the way down. Or you can do the reverse without, making it look crazy. But there's so many aspects where you learn in the get up how to accelerate, decelerate. And even when it comes to everyday people, like I think learning how to decelerate is very beneficial, because when it comes to you recuperating from an injury, or say you're crossing a street and a car comes in front of you really, really quick and you know how to decelerate and stop, it helps quite a bit. The last one here, develops upper body strength, trunk strength, and hip strength. So now that we kind of covered all the little nitty gritty stuff, the overlying benefit of the get up is the strength component. When I get someone able to do the entire get up from start to finish, then that's when I'll challenge the load. Imagine how I said earlier with someone not being able to just roll over, getting them to do that, and then adding for a dude a 24 kilo, for a woman a 16 kilo, and do that for 1 rep aside. Like that is a huge achievement. Like if I had someone come in and they're like, I have a plateau in my deadlift, the Turkish Get Up is what I'm going to give them. And most of the time, even if people have done a Turkish Get Up because they saw it online, they don't do it right. They don't do it the way if you took a Strong First or a Dragon Door RKC certification. They don't know the hard style kettlebell way of doing the get up. Most people just kind of just roll into it and they're all kind of floppy, but doing get ups with purpose is going to really, really, really help.